All right, today we're going to be covering installing the rocker arm assemblies. I've already installed the push tubes. Hopefully my video on my camera will work for that. I have brand new push tubes, push rods, so it did not matter which location they went in. If you are reusing push rods, you need to make sure that the push rods along with the rocker arms and the valve bridges all go in the exact same position at which they were removed. If you paid attention to my removal video of this, you would know that you should be setting these on a cardboard thing with markers or some way to mark the orientation and the location of all of these and which cylinders they belong to. Now, it's pretty obvious to tell by lining them up, but if you just want some verification, the short rocker arms, which are for the intake, will be the first ones towards the front of the block, and these longer ones are the exhaust ones that go for the exhaust. So you'll have short and long, and they alternate like that down the engine. If you're having a hard time telling or you want to verify this, there's plenty of pictures on YouTube, or you can look at the alignment of the exhaust ports with the valves, and that will tell you the obvious location for these. But the long ones are exhaust, short ones are intake. Now, I highly recommend that you turn these engines over to the top dead center of whatever cylinder you're doing. Long story short, I have seen a particular person in my past do an injector on one of these, which you had to take the rocker assemblies off for, and I specifically told them to turn over that cylinder to where that cylinder was on top dead center before installing this and torquing this down, and they didn't fucking listen to me, and they bent a push rod doing it. Alright, so here I'm just lubing the ends of the push rods. I did this to the other ends too, as well as the insides of the tappets. After that, we're going to install the valve bridges, and we're going to lube those as well with assembly lube. I put the little nubs on these towards the outside on all of them. It does not really matter as long as they're all the same. And then here is the bracket for the rocker assemblies. As you can see, I'm just showing you the little oil galley lines that helps get oil to the rockers. And that fits nicely into that block. And then we're going to install the first set of rockers in there finger tight. What I'm going to do is, because these are individual rocker levers, I'm going to install these as per the timing sequence and for the valve adjustment sequence. So right now, we have it on top dead center 1 with this timing mark, which this timing mark being up is either top dead center compression for cylinder 1 or top dead center compression for cylinder 6. It's not the same. You cannot, the top dead center is not the same for intake or for compression and exhaust, as you all know. So what we're going to do is we're going to do intakes 1, 2, and 4, because those should be loose, and then we're going to install exhaust 1, 3, and 5, and then we're going to turn it to the next top dead center mark and then run the rest. Alright, so here you can see that I'm loosening these. I loosened these as far as they would loosen without the push rods contacting the valve rocker itself before I install them and before I torque them down. You can put these in there just without like following the sequence. Just don't torque them down until you're on that sequence that I was talking about earlier. Here I actually found that one of my rocker arms, the little button on the very end of it, is broken. So I have a whole nother set of these in my other garage, so I'm just going to go grab another one. But yeah, loosen them before you torque them down, then run the valves. So what I'm going to do with that broken one is I do have another engine over here. I might go and pull one from that engine. But until then, we're just going to run the rest of these for the sake of this video so I can get some shit done. I'm installing all of these loosely just so the bolt holes all line up. And then again, we're going to follow that top dead center compression 1 valve adjustment sequence for torquing these down and adjusting the valves, and then we're going to turn it over 360 to top dead center compression 6, and then run that with torquing those those respective cylinders down and then adjust them. I know this one's broken, but we're going to at least kind of screw it down a little bit so that bracket that these sit on for the cylinder is even. We're going to take it apart. All right, so I'm going to explain a little bit here on the valve adjustments. I'm setting these to 10 on the intake and 20 on the exhaust. That's the base specification for these. It's pretty easy to figure this out. You're supposed to do a slight drag on the feeler gauge, so not super tight and not super loose either. It's supposed to be a slight drag. I've figured out that if you turn these adjustment knobs down to where it won't move, and then tighten it down, because when you tighten this adjusting screw down, it pulls it up a little bit, so it will loosen it a little bit. They're perfect. But however you do it, just make sure you find a way to do it that is consistent and makes all of them consistent. I will also be running this valve adjustment twice just to make sure. Again, following the sequence for top dead center compression 1. I like to put little tabs on the end of my feeler gauges just so I can keep track of them. I have a bottle opener I always use for either intake or exhaust, and then my snap-on one is for the other one. That way I know which one is intake and which one is exhaust. It just helps keep from switching them up. These are really important to make sure they're right. Then we're going to turn the engine over to top dead center compression 6. And I say top dead center compression, guys, because top dead center compression is different than top dead center. So now we're going to follow the sequence for number 6 and torque them down and adjust them. All this does is keep you from bending push rods. I have seen people bend push rods, personally not doing it this way and just bolting them back down and not caring where the cylinder is or if the valves are open or closed. So all this does is just an extra step to make sure that you don't bend any push rods, because the last thing you want is to get this engine installed and get it fired up and then realize you bent a push rod, because these do not have tappet covers. So if you bend one bad enough, you will have to tear the engine all the way back apart to get it out, and nobody wants to do that. So do it right the first time and take a little bit extra time, and you won't have to do it twice. That is my motto. Oh shit, I was still recording.